So in this video, we're going to be talking about the concept of externality. And we're going to mostly do this in the context of environmental science. And in environmental science, the way that we usually think about externalities is in the process of consumption or consumerism. So let's say you are interested in buying a juice box. You take out your money, you give it to the producer of the juice box, and in return you get the item, right? So you've now got your juice box, and the producer of the juice box has their money. So this is kind of a win-win situation. You've got your product, they've got their money. And so everyone is happy. Except that usually things aren't necessarily this neat. So usually sometimes this transaction can also impact a third party who was not part of the transaction but still has to deal with some of the after effects of that purchase. One of the main ways that we think about this in environmental science is usually we focus on the kind of production side. So the company or the factory or the industry or the just mom and pop store who produced that item may have used a toxic material in that production of that unit. So maybe the aluminum lining of your juice box has to be produced with a toxic chemical, something like that. So the company may intentionally or unintentionally release some of those toxins into the environment. So let's say those toxins leak out and they get into the water supply. That then can affect fish populations because, if we remember to some of our other lessons about like the law of conservation of matter, so like matter is not created or destroyed. So many times those toxins can persist in the environment for a very long time. So it may impact fish populations, or it may just reduce the amount of water that's available for people in the community to drink. That can lead to, right, those are negative impacts on that third party, right? So that third party person didn't have anything to do with that transaction of the juice box, right? They didn't get the juice and they didn't get the money for the juice box, right? So they're completely separate from that whole transaction. So I think in environmental science, a lot of times we kind of focus on the producer as the generator of externalities. But in reality, it could also be on the consumer's end, right? So you've just drank down your delicious juice, and now you're kind of left with this box. You throw it away, and maybe it doesn't biodegrade, so maybe it builds up in the environment. Or maybe the straws, those lovely bendy straws, are seagull magnets, and so seagulls eat them and then choke on them, right? So there could be a hazard with regards to that. And so those are all impacts on the environment that can impact our third-party individual. But not all externalities are negative. So let's say everyone's drinking juice and they're running around because they have all this excess energy, and it starts a fitness craze that now everyone's working out more or running more, right? That could be a positive outcome of that transaction that you didn't necessarily plan. And it might impact third parties, right? But in a positive way, right? So people are in better health. That fitness craze might also make people run on people are running around, and so maybe they're trampling grass more, right? So it in turn can have a negative effect. But even if we're not looking at necessarily the environmental impacts, so with the fish example, we talk about the death of fish. It seems very concrete, but the idea can even be more kind of esoteric, right? So kind of abstract. So it could be that all of this running around from this juice fitness craze makes the third parties or groups of people more anxious because there's just more movement and they're just like, what's going on? And so that could be a negative impact, right? So it's not necessarily a physical toxin or poison in the environment or even the death of fish. It's really just a feeling or a perception. Those can also be negative externalities. So you can see there's a range of types and level of impact that these externalities can take, right? So some of them may be minor, like your irritation with this latest fitness craze, or it could be more global and larger impacts, such as like with the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere causing climate change, or increased fertilizer runoff causing dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico, right? So those can have large impacts on our environment. And those are just from things that you would not necessarily have predicted just from the kind of sale and purchase of a bag of chips, right? And the idea is that in an externality, if you incorporate the concept of externalities, you can get the larger picture of what are the impacts of these actions of consumption and consumerism and how they can potentially impact our environment.